I'd like to ask you now then some questions about global collaboration in AI development. And you have another video about the importance of global collaboration and dialogue in AI development. So I'd like to draw parallels to that discussion. And I think, David, that the YouTube video was the AGI Moloch,
Hmm.
equilibrium, attractor states, and heuristic imperatives, how to achieve utopia. But my first question in regards to that video was, how can such collaboration shape AI's evolution in business systems and business in general, or in terms of the ERP context?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And, to provide a little bit of context for that video, the work that I was doing, everyone in movies and books and popular media, there's a lot of like really negative possible outcomes that people are afraid of. You might have heard the term doomer, right?
Hmm.
People that think that AI is going to kill everyone or it's going to take all of our jobs. And then every corporation is going to basically be like running as a zombie organization that has no employees, but makes billions of dollars. And while those outcomes are not likely, any movement towards some of those really negative outcomes could be problematic, could be dangerous, make life worse for some people and better for others and tip the scale towards inequality. And so that's the framing context to answer your question in terms of open source collaboration or transparent research. And so there's actually, these were not my ideas, by the way. These are just ideas that have been kicked around within the AI alignment and research spaces. And so there's two international organizations that were kind of the inspiration for some of these ideas. One was CERN is based in France, and they run the gigantic particle accelerators. And that international research, it pulls together like 10,000 physicists on an annual basis. They have a budget of, I think, like $6 billion. And they publish all of their research to the participating nations because the value of that research is just so high that it's not worth keeping private. And then the second organization is similar. It's ITER, which is trying to build fusion reactors. And of course, the joke in the industry is fusion is always 20 years away. But the idea is that fusion would be so economically valuable to everyone that, again, it's not worth keeping it private. And so AI is kind of the third pillar that is very similar, where the possible benefit to all businesses, all nations, the entire human race is so high that this is the kind of thing that it would be worth creating an open source or international research consortium. And so there's talk about doing it. A lot of us put all of our work out there for free, open source. And so that is just part of the way that the industry is going. And when you have a new technology like this, that it's kind of like the Wild West. Nobody knows left from right. And so we're all kind of scrambling to move as quickly as we can. At the beginning, I played with the idea of keeping some of my work private, but then it's just like, okay, the rest of the industry moves on. And, one of the mantras that I came up with that I kind of repeat is that aligned AI is good for business. Aligned AI is good for more than just business. It's good for everyone. And so that's kind of the underlying ethos that kind of drives some of these decisions, where obviously every corporation has some protected IP. They're going to have some proprietary software and innovations. But by and large, the amount of possibility here is just so great. It's like a blue ocean fishing expedition. You just go out, you cast your line, you get your fish, and there's enough room for everyone to get their fish. So that's kind of the background of that mentality.
And David, when you talk about aligned AI is good for business, what role could regulatory frameworks play in promoting ethical AI use in corporate landscapes? And don't we all benefit if it is we're all aligned? It's not just that AI is aligned for business. AI alignment in general is good for
Mhm.
business, right? So what
Sure.
do you have to say about regulatory frameworks and how it promotes ethical AI use? And this is actually something you talk about as well in this particular video that we referred to earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. And so here's the thing is some of these, whether it's a regulatory framework or an industry-based framework, basically we're at a point where nobody really knows how to get started. And so this is actually some of the feedback that I've gotten from some of my clients, is actually that the work that I've done, some of the frameworks that I have built or relayed that either come from universities or governments or commissions, basically it's just a roadmap. That's the way to think about it, is that okay, yes, regulations are there to say like, well, you have to, be this high to ride this ride, or you have to do things in a certain way, otherwise you'll get fines or whatever. But really, because this industry is moving so fast, everyone needs all the help that they can get. And so by having a clear framework, whether it's a regulatory framework or a roadmap or whatever, if you think about it as it's there to help you in order to adopt these things safely, because here's an example from a conversation that I had with one of my clients, is that he went before his board of directors, and his board of directors, they were all like in a panic because we got to do generative AI, but we don't know what we don't know, and we don't know how to get
Yeah.
started. And so he carried some of the work that I had done, and it just had all the answers ready to go. And they're like, by the end of the meeting, they had the confidence that they knew how to approach generative AI safely, because it's about de-risking it, right? If you implement a new technology and it goes sideways, you could be on the hook for, damages or losses or whatever. And so the idea is you got to move fast, but if you're too reckless, you're going to do unintended harm. And so that's why a lot of these regulatory frameworks or guidelines or roadmaps are coming out, is because everyone is lost and everyone's doing,
Yeah.
everyone's trying to catch up as fast as they can. So really, that's my primary recommendation, is just look at it as a roadmap. This is how you do it right. If you follow the instructions, you won't burn the mac and cheese.
So, David, let's chat more about the alignment and control problem. How might the heuristic imperatives guide the pursuit of these positive outcomes in AI development application within businesses? And maybe to ask the same question in a slightly different way, I think your solution to all of this is what you call heuristic imperatives. So, can you please elaborate for our listeners what that means, and then how it's a potential solution to the alignment control problem?
Yeah, absolutely. So for some background, when I first got my hands on these technologies, I realized we had invented thinking machines. And that was a really profound realization to sit with. And I said, well, if you've got a machine that can think about anything, how does it know what to think about? How does it know what to do? And so the first couple of years of work that I did on this generation of GPT technology, it did take about 2 years to figure it out. Was okay, what are the general principles that an autonomous or semi-autonomous AI should abide by in order to just not go wrong? And the end result of that 2 years of work was what I call heuristic imperatives. And so a heuristic is a shorthand. It's a rule of thumb. It's a way of making decisions or judgments very quickly. And then an imperative is a command or a mandate. And so what I ultimately came up with was a framework of 3 heuristic imperatives that serve as kind of the highest like moral compass or a set of principles or guiding principles for any autonomous AI system. And that is reduce suffering in the universe, increase prosperity in the universe, and increase understanding in the universe. And so when I published all this work and I started giving examples and demos, of course, some of my clients started integrating these into their chatbots. And the feedback that I got was, whether it was a chatbot or one of them was an autonomous research assistant, was that by incorporating these principles into the design of these generative AI tools, it gave them a broader context, a more global context or scope of thought that kind of kept them on like, okay, whatever else is true, this is my purpose. This is why I exist. This is why I was built. And, all corporations, whether they're providing goods or services, they are there to increase prosperity. That is why corporations exist, is because they're efficiency-seeking systems to provide necessary goods and services that ultimately, if you drill down, pretty much every business on the planet ultimately either reduces the suffering of someone or increases their prosperity or teaches them something, right? Like that's why medical care exists. This is why therapy exists. This is why cars exist, right? Everything exists. And so these universal principles that I came up with are really, one, they're easy to implement, and that's one of their strengths. But then it also just gives a more nuanced understanding as to like why the AI tool exists. And by incorporating that, rather than, because here's the thing, let me take a step back, is when people start designing AI tools, they often think very tactically. And by tactically, I mean like, follow this step, follow this step, follow this step. It's like the peanut butter sandwich, right? You give someone really explicit instructions on to make a peanut butter sandwich without ever describing what the end goal actually is.
Yeah.
And so by providing some of that context, some of that like strategic context, it tends to make pretty much everything that the AI does a little bit better. And that has actually evolved to what I now call mission-oriented programming, that was described in one of my most recent videos.